Alrighty, guys, Andrew Bobros here. I want to do a video on the trade deadline and go through a few articles, just sort of, recapping the rumors that we are looking at or tracking to see who we could potentially target in a trade move that, again, ends tomorrow. The time of me filming this, no trades have been made or any rumors up to this point. But let's at least review the names, see what the rumors are, and get into it, see what happens. You guys know what this is. This is our merch. Check it out. Zazzle. Check us out also, guys, on, the gram, Twitters, all the above. We're on all the podcast channels as well, too. Spotify, all the above. So at any rate, all right, let's get into it, guys. Let me share my screen and go through a couple articles real fast. And again, I really want, if there's some players you think that we did not cover or I did not cover here, let's, throw them out there as well, too. I'd love to hear your thoughts on who we should get. But let me first go through the conversation around management, what I really think is going to happen, what I think really is not going to happen, right? Let me first start off by saying this. I think the Spanos family is probably done spending money, right? So, and I talked about this, I believe, was it on Thursday or Friday of last week, where I talked about our management team and how Eric Smith had this article stating, hey, look, probably not going to make any major moves. And the reason being is, guys, they already spent a lot of money, right? I mean, they threw a lot of money already off this offseason. Again, like I said, Brandon Staley sat on Tom Telesco's lap with Papa Spanos and said, hey, this is what we need. Tom went out and got it. And unfortunately, things have not, panned out with some of these players, right? JC Jackson, so on and so forth. So my initial argument is I think the Spanos family is saying, sorry, we're done. We spent the money we needed to. And the other argument I would say why we probably won't make any moves is that Tom Telesco likes to have his draft picks. He doesn't like to trade away draft picks very often. Again, it's a conversation where I know Tom believes he can find value in the draft. And I've seen a lot of people's, comments about Tom being a bad drafter. I'm a bit indifferent, right? Because I do think, bottom line, everyone that they draft is talented. It's the it's the team's management's job to make that player better or have them fit inside of our scheme, right? And so, again, I think it's a little bit Tom, but I think it's also our coaching staff that really has to make that team better or that player better. So, again, just as a blanket statement, I really don't think the Spanos family is going to spend money. I don't think Tom's probably going to make any moves. I think Brandon Staley's probably really looking at players and seeing what's out there. I'm sure Tom and Brandon are having discussions, sidebar conversations about available players and what it would require for them to give up players moving forward. So, blanket statement, don't think there's going to be moves, but let's review anyways and see what's out there, see what people are saying or these writers are saying might happen. Now, so these are some big ones right here. And again, I really think the Chargers should go get a wide receiver. Now, the other one I also think is a lineman would be good to pick up. And I think we could probably pick up a lineman, at any given moment. But there's a few here that I like. Now, I like all of these. I don't want to go too into them right now because we're going to talk more about them later on. But I think a lineman makes a lot of sense as well, too, just because, we really got to get the running game going. And I think it's it's an easier position to pick up rather than, a wide receiver, right? So I have some hesitations around picking up a wide receiver during the mid-season. Great example, look at someone like an OBJ who went to the Rams. The Rams did not do a good job of really utilizing OBJ, right? They didn't pay him a lot of money, but, he scored 5 touchdowns. I think he only 350 yards, something of that nature, was more of a red zone target. And he wasn't even really available in the Super Bowl because he was injured. So, it's a really interesting conversation. Again, this discussion really is largely based around injuries. And this is why I also like the idea of an offensive lineman for more depth, because I think injuries will continue piling up, right? We've already heard Salyer's banged up. We've seen Pipkins banged up. Pipkins hasn't stayed healthy for a very long period of time. Obviously, our center is not doing too great. Corey Lindsey's had some issues. So, again, wide receiver and also a lineman makes sense to me. So, again, we will see. And I did talk about this on one of our other episodes, but this is a good little point. After I think it was the Monday right after our last game, we're always going to look for avenues to enhance our team and make it better. Staley said about exploring trade options at the deadline. If those avenues are possible, we'll definitely explore them. Guys, they're exploring the options. I promise you they're exploring the options. They're at least looking at who's available and who could be there. Whether they take it or not is another conversation. Right? And again, if you watch my article about management this last week, Eric Smith did a really good article regarding Tom Telesco. Tom really doesn't like giving up draft capital. So I don't think the conversation makes sense for us to give up a lot of draft capital moving forward. So these are some interesting situations, right? Where, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So I suspect something may happen on Tuesday, but I'm really not holding my breath. So let's go through some of the players, and I'll give some opinions. Again, if there's some players that we have missed in this discussion, please throw it out there as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And guys, as always, we love your comments. Keep your comments coming. I love it. I love engaging with you guys on the YouTube channel. And I love to see your thoughts, and ideas moving forward. So let's go through a few. Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks makes sense. I think he's getting a little older, though. I read a few articles about Brandon Cooks specifically. I like the idea of someone like Brandon Cooks being with the Chargers. But again, it kind of puts us in the same situation, with a Mike Williams and a Keenan Allen, right? And, with Williams expected to miss this time, it's tough, right? And we don't know how long this injury with Allen's going to last, right? And, and even Parham, right? He's got this concussion. He came back for one game. Literally, I think he played a quarter and then he's out. Palmer not doing good. He had a concussion. So guys were banged up. A wide receiver does make sense to me. The part, and again, I've already said this briefly, but again, I'm just going to blanket statement my frustrations about a wide receiver. My argument is that a wide receiver is a much more difficult position to come in midseason and play well with a quarterback. And the reason being is you have to be on the same page as a quarterback. Good example, someone like a Gerald Everett. I think there's been a couple times this season he's been a little bit off. Not really in the same page as Justin Herbert making plays in the field. So I get a little stressed out about him. Another person we could go after, someone like Cook, right? Our old tight end that we had. And I don't know, Jared Cook, I think he could make some sense, right? He knows offense. He could come back. But what we'd have to give up to get him, I don't know. That's one of those concerns that I have moving forward. So, and again, it's a tight end, but it also boils down to how bad the injuries is with Parham moving forward. So, William Jackson makes sense. I like him. He probably get him pretty cheap. Maybe a 5th round pick or 6th round pick. That might not be too bad, but someone like William Jackson could be good. Again, I think what Brandon Staley wants, though, is players that understand his system. Both these players don't, right? So, again, a blanket statement moving forward, I would say that I do think that most likely he would want to get players that actually understand his system offensively and defensively, really to fill in the gap. A lot of these articles don't really suggest that, but that's just my take. Cam Akers makes sense, I suppose, right? Look, I don't think a running back makes sense. I personally still think Sony Michel is a good depth guy, right? He has not performed well, but again, knock on wood, if Austin Eckler were to get hurt, Sony Michel would be a good running back 3. And then who knows, Isaiah Spiller could step in as well too, right? So, and then we still have Roundtree. I don't really see a running back as being, someone we should really target moving forward. Now, I do like Chase Claypool. I think Claypool's a really good younger version of Mike Williams. He's a pretty aggressive guy, good yards after the catch guy. So I do like this as a potential target. I would say they probably have to give up a lot to get him. And again, going back to Tom Telesco, I don't think he wants to do that. So I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that idea. I don't know. Isaiah Wynn, again, with Rashawn Slater being out. And again, having some banged up right and left tackles. I mean, there are discussions around injuries that are happening. Isaiah Wynn could be a good pickup. But again, he's not having a great year. He's doing all right. So I don't know, but again, a depth guy is good. And again, the other conversation is we really don't want our ponytail boy coming in if we do have some more injuries on the line as well. I mean, we know that we don't have a lot of depth in certain positions. So an Isaiah Wynn might be a nice target for us, moving forward and going from there. So Chargers Wire has some pretty good little breakdowns. I do like this a little more. This is a little bit more relevant to us. You could go get a Will Fuller. Again, I don't know that I really like the idea of Will Fuller. I think he's okay. And these are free agents, guys, right? These are people that we can't just go grab, and I like the idea of that, and that might make some sense. I would think, personally, these make more, let me put it this way. These make more sense to me because we're not going to give up anything, right? These are players that are just available to grab. Um, and again, why have we not done that? I don't quite know. Maybe there's, again, performance enhancing drugs. These are issues. These are concerns, right? And these are players that maybe we don't really feel like they're good locker room guys. And that would be my argument why we're probably not going after some of these players or other teams for this matter, right? But again, losing someone like Guyton and having some speed would be a good thing, right? So, Will Fuller could make some sense. John Ross could make some sense as well too. I don't know. I guess he had a little workout in Arizona. It looks like John Ross is ready to go. But again, like, these are players that aren't out there. They don't know our system. They don't understand our system. And again, let's maybe talk about this with wide receivers. I really do believe that our coaching staff feels like we have the right wide receivers to make a Super Bowl run. Having said that, guys, the injuries is what the problem is, right? So you get a John Ross who hasn't played. It makes a difference, right? They're not game ready. Are they game ready? Who knows, right? You got to ask yourself this question. Would a wide receiver even make a difference? I would argue they probably won't, right? But again, is Mike Bandy going to be the guy? I know he's a fan favorite, but is he really going to be the guy? Is he really going to step up and do well? I mean, DeAndre Carter's had flashes of brilliance, but he's not been amazing. So these are all questions, right? Dede Westbrook, another great example, right? Look, I think, he understands Ryan Ficken's, special teams. I don't know. These are some guys that we could bring in as well too. Again, not a huge fan of some of these things, right? KJ Hamler, I do like the idea of KJ Hamler potentially because he is very unhappy with the Broncos. The Broncos probably are going to do, they could potentially do a fire sale. Of course, after they won this weekend, right, you got to kind of wonder how much they would like to do that, right, moving forward. I don't know. Marquez Callaway, this could make some sense too. To me, this list makes more sense to me because you could get them cheap. They're not out on a team now. They are a veteran. They could step in, and they would be, someone that could boost your team up the second half of the season, right? So again, what are your thoughts on some of this list, right? And again, Marquez Callaway, perfect example, understands Joe Lombardi's system. That's another reason why he might be picked up because it would make sense, right? He wouldn't have to do much. He already knows the system, already knows what to do. KJ Hamler, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of this idea in general. Anyways, these folks from the Patriots do make sense. I think there's a lot of money there. I don't know that I would want to spend a ton of money. Chase Claypool, we already talked about Chase Claypool. And again, Elijah Moore. A lot of fans want Elijah Moore. That makes sense. But again, what are they willing to give up? And right now, the Jets are playing great. So you kind of have to ask yourself this question. Why would they want to trade some depth players when you're potentially looking at a playoff berth, right? I think they're 5-2 or maybe 5-3 at this point. So at any rate, I don't know that makes a lot of sense. Elijah Moore, I don't know. I would love that, but I don't see them giving him up. Now, another one that I thought was pretty intriguing, that I thought was pretty interesting. A couple tight end choices, right? Mike Gesicki. I like the idea of a tight end just because we really like tight ends, and I know really Justin Herbert likes to throw to tight end, so that would make some sense. Again, that's a lot of money. You got to wonder how much money is left over to really go after a player like this. So I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It could be. Jimmy Graham makes sense, but again, he would want a lot of money, I would think. So it's like, but is he going to really help that much, right? Is he really going to step in and do a lot? I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those situations. Maybe a defensive tackle and Darren Payne. I'm not a huge fan of this. A couple that I could be interesting, right? I do think the Browns season is not looking too great. Myles Garrett or Jadeveon Clowney, they could make sense to me to some degree, or even the cornerback Denzel Ward. But again, it boils down to what type of draft capital are we willing to give up? And also, are we willing to take some of this money off of their hands? Because I promise you, if they're going to trade Myles Garrett away, they're not going to just trade him away freely, right? Well, take his contract, right? So that's going to be difficult. Again, I don't really know that I see a lot of a lot of discussions around that make a lot of sense to me, right? It could not, but again, what we've done up to this point is just sign some players that just understand our system, and hopefully they come in and can make some things happen. These ones make a little more sense to me. They're not the best edge rushers out there, but there's someone that I think on a cheap Spanos trade, maybe a 5th-round pick or a 6th-round pick, we could go after and get, right? So Jerry Hughes is one that I thought was interesting. Again, I love the idea of Jerry Hughes. Obviously our boy Jamari shut him down when we played the Texans. But again, is he really going to be that guy that would step in and really help our team a whole lot? I would argue maybe not. But it does make sense to me to maybe go get a guy like that. We can get him a little cheaper than some of the other edge rushers that we discussed. The Clownies and the other folks that we've discussed. Ife Obada, I think, could make some sense as well too, from the Commanders. Again, my argument though is he doesn't really know our system, doesn't know Brandon Staley. But again, edge rushing is edge rushing, right? You could probably get him fairly cheap. He would not be bad. And this one would make sense from a financial perspective, in my opinion, right? I do think he could be someone that could step in and do well potentially. And then Lorenzo Carter from the Falcons. Again, not having a great season, but you could probably get him decently cheap, right? I feel like these, as far as edge rushers, make sense to me because they're not going to be huge. They're not going to break the bank. And as I've already outlined, we've already spent a lot of money this season. I just don't believe that the Spanos family is really willing to give up a lot more money to continue, moving forward. So these are some of the ones that I thought were great. So again, what are your guys' thoughts, right? So do these make sense? Do some of these make sense? Did I miss anybody that you think we should go after? And I'll also recap a little bit as well, too. Again, guys, I think overall we probably will not make a move tomorrow or later on today. Again, reading through the tea leaves, I really do believe that the Spanos family has spent pretty much all the money they're going to spend, right? I think they're probably a little frustrated with how much money they spent with like J.C. Jackson and some of these other folks. They probably are just unhappy that he's out, haven't really performed up to this point. Spent a lot of money on Khalil Mack. We brought in a lot of talent, right? I promise that discussion internally is going, Brandon, Tom, we went out and spent all this money and we're 4-3. So there's arguments to be made both ways that I think the real people behind the scenes are probably done. I wouldn't be surprised if Brandon Staley was aggressively, and also Tom Telesco aggressively trying to get some players. But they're going to mommy and daddy asking for funds at this point, right? Mom, dad, can I have some money to go buy something that I want, right? And that's a player, right, to make our team better. And I would also say this, too, it's a bit of a panic move for Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco if they go out and do that as well, too, right? Because you would be also declaring to the team that, all right, you're our edge rusher, but you know what? I'm going to go out and get this other guy because he's probably better than you, or he's going to be a depth player. So that's where you start having discussions around losing the locker room and frustrating players moving forward. Again, we did talk about Sony Michel. I think bringing Sony Michel in was a really bad decision. I understand it was a depth decision, but bringing him in, I think, right, especially at the beginning of the season when the running back crew had such a good cohesiveness going, I think it hurt the team, right? And I think that's partially why the running back group has had some problems. You look at Austin Eckler and some of his conversations around Sony Michel, why he's not getting touches. He was very perplexed. Like, I don't know why I'm not getting touches, yada, yada. So, again, there's a lot to discuss around this. Personally, my opinion is even bringing people in midweek trading, these trade deadline things, to some degree, they sort of signal panic moves. I don't think this team wants to do that. I don't think this team will do that. And I also don't think the Spanos family is going to pay the money. So What do you guys think? Agree or disagree with me? Tell me what you think. I mean, am I right? Am I wrong? Who should we go after? Who we shouldn't go after? Did I miss anybody on this list? Um, guys, as always, right? We're here to support you. We're here to talk about our favorite topic, and that's the Chargers. As always, guys, I'm Andrew Bopros. See you guys in the next one.